armed with a mug from the Galactic Empire, some tea of wisdom, and no pants. That's right, no pants. The Golden Stallion is here to review the Apple event. Did they even give this thing a fucking name? Like, don't they usually give it, I don't know, some kind of like, I don't know, isn't the fall event or whatever? I don't know. They used to give this shit names. Of course, everything used to be at WWDC back when this shit was cool. But anyway, I'm not wearing any pants because I already barfed all over my pants after seeing this thing, that being the Apple event, and particularly the iPhone X, or I'm sorry, the iPhone 10. I think there's some significance to that, but then I kind of already let a lot of cats out of the doggy bag, and that's kind of an ironic statement. But anyway, you know, I recently read on Sarah Ha. Let me punch it up here. Did you come here to hear me sing? No, I don't think you did. Oh, wrong button. Jesus Christ. Oh, wrong button again. Wow, you know, phone screens. In fact, we're going to talk a lot about phone screens in this episode, in this little Patreon bonus review of the Apple event. And here we go, popping up Sarah Ha right now. Why does that take so long to load? Jesus. All right, so here it is. Let's see. I can't tell you how much I hate listening to you drink your tea, sir. Well, just for you. Woo! Here we go. Blackberry sage from the Republic of Tea, the tea of wisdom. I'm going to give you a little extra sound here too. I'm gonna plug in my phone since it's almost out of battery, which actually that doesn't happen that often on a day. My Moto, what I use as a daily driver is the Moto E4. I've talked about this before. Mainly because it's small, it still has a headphone jack, and it's running what was up until last week the absolute latest version of Android. It's just not running Oreo, but maybe that's okay because every phone that's getting Oreo is having, you know, mobile data problems. So, hey, I'm willing to wait a couple weeks and not be so fucking bleeding edge with it all. But anyway, I'll probably get into some more of the Sarah Ha comments that I got in this week's Patreon Q&A. And by the way, we got our live hangout. That's going to be coming up real fast. Probably next week we'll end up doing that one. I don't know if it'll be a Sunday. It might be during a weekday again, or I will schedule it for a Sunday, which I guess that Sunday would that be the 7th? No, the 24th. Holy shit. Oh, no. We're not doing it on the 24th. Sorry, guys. We're going to have to do it on a weekday. Because September 24th, we all know what that is. That's when Star Trek Discovery starts, baby. And I am taking that whole day off. I'm having a viewing party. I might have some other kind of parties, too. Because that's going to be the time. I've been waiting for more Prime Universe Star Trek. Of course, I'm still debating whether or not it really will be Prime Universe in the end. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Star Trek. We're here to talk about Apple. Let's fucking get into this stuff, okay? So Apple, the Apple event, it was held at 1 p.m. Eastern Time today, and today being, I'm recording this on the day of the event, which is September 12th, 2017, and I got to tell you, so this was the first event. This is the first, and this was also the public unveiling, kind of a deuce here. No, deuce means even or means shit. So one of those makes sense, but kind of got a double whammy. How about that? We got a double whammy of that. It was it was the first time they've held an event in the Stephen Jobs Theater, which is part of their new, the new spaceship campus and all that. And also it was the public unveiling of that theater. To talk about the theater first, because they made a big deal about this. First off, this whole thing was very boring. Remarkably boring. In fact, what I found, and this is not good for especially for what is in many ways a hardware company, this is not good news because I was way more excited. Now, you could say after the fact that, all right, hold on, let me finish my sentence. I was way more excited about what they were announcing with like their stores and a lot of their more physical spaces than I was about any of the hardware that they talked about. Now, you could say, well, those physical spaces, those stores, of course, they gave them a different name now, but those stores are going to sell the hardware. So it's exciting for hardware. Okay, fucking maybe. But at your event, Really, especially, obviously, the last thing is supposed to be the most important thing. And the last thing, and we'll get to it, is the iPhone 10. That should fucking be exciting as hell. And it wasn't. Not even close. All right. So the store being the most exciting part of your presentation, yes, that's a fucking problem. Okay. Now, I'm not going to be all hate Apple in this. I kind of hate Apple, but I've had my moments. There's a time where I was a huge Apple fanboy, okay? And there's still things that Apple does that I love and I appreciate. There's a lot that I respect, particularly the iPhone platform in general. Believe me, I do respect it, okay? It is, and I've said this before, one could easily argue that especially out of the box, okay, as far as consumer grade experiences, that the iPhone is the most secure system you can use and the most, secure setup that you can use. With iOS, okay, more particularly, I guess I should say iOS, but of course that comes with very specific hardware. It has to. So look, I'm not all going to hate Apple here, okay? I'm just saying, let's be clear here that this does not bode well for this company. All right, when your announcement about your new retail spaces is more exciting than your hardware announcements. Doesn't matter if it's going to sell the hardware. We're not talking about sales figures. Fuck it. Really, are we going to go down that road? Do you want to talk about just because something sells a whole ton that's like a good thing across the board? No. Shit, the best things in life generally don't sell a whole lot. Like that. Oh, that's just stupid. Anyway, all right. So let's talk about this. I guess I'll start off talking a bit about the Steve Jobs Theater itself. This is a very impressive affair. Very impressive. And I can only imagine that their spaceship campus is going to be quadruply impressive. It had, what was amazing about it when I was looking at it, now this is a circular, this whole theater is circular. Inside of it, yes, there are flat screens. It's not all curved screens. They did have like the state-of-the-art Dolby Vision 4K screen in there that they were displaying some stuff, and that became important when the Apple TV, announcement came along, which we'll get to. But it is a gorgeous fucking theater. There's no two ways around about that. It's gorgeous. And it has the amazing ability to both look incredibly modern, but also kind of feel almost like a Spartan meeting house. And I don't mean Spartan as in like there's not a lot in it, which it doesn't look like it is very austere. If that's the right word to use. Like there's not a lot of accoutrement. It's very simple. I love that about, and we'll get into that also with Apple's new retail spaces. But I really like that. I love that minimalist look with not a lot of shit in it. Now, in my studio here in the BDSM, the Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic studio, in the BDSM studio, yeah, I have a ton of shit, but there's a reason for that. And it's because, my studio is not for people to be here sitting in it and have an experience. My studio is to make love to the camera. Okay. Everything in here is designed. It's smoke and mirrors to make to make things look good on camera. So that's why there's a ton of shit. Otherwise, generally, fuck yeah, I love an absolutely minimalist, nothing laying around, nothing on the walls, all that, setup. I absolutely love that. Okay. And you get that. And that's what and so when I said Spartan, I mean, literally like something you'd see in Sparta. Okay. Like a townhouse in Sparta, or not a townhouse, but a town meeting room in Sparta. It looked just like that. And then of course you have that big, gorgeous screen. You have a beautiful, I'm sure the seating's got to be phenomenal and everything. But I thought it was stunning. My opinion, I think the Steve Jobs Theater is amazing. There was some funny comments made about the fact that there's 9,000 trees on their campus. Like, what the fuck? It was just asphalt before. To say that they turned it into, a veritable garden inside of 10 years. Yeah, sure. And understand this has taken 10 years to finally come to fruition. Yeah, that's something to, I guess I understand why you're boasting about it, because now it's, just stunning, as before it was just like a parking lot. But it just came off kind of funny, when they were saying that sort of stuff. So after they showed off impressively a lot of the Steve Jobs Theater, which was a great idea for them to do. Because that's a big, big deal. Then, you saw everybody in there. I thought it was funny. Here's something that's kind of humorous, is that you had varying, obviously you have to have a badge of some kind to get into this event. Okay. Not necessarily into the theater. In fact, they said there's like a public display area at the theater. I don't know that there was a store built. I think there might've been a store also built into the theater. But there is a public display area, like a demo area where you can test out all the products they announce and everything else. I'll admit I'd love to watch The Last Jedi in that fucking theater. Just saying. But anyway, so you have varying people that can get it. I mean, there's parts of it that are public that are absolutely open to the public. You don't need any kind of badge to get into it. But obviously to get into this event, you needed a badge. You had to be part of a very exclusive group of journalists, and not all were able to get in. So you saw like blue badges and red badges. Those were the main two colors that I saw. Now, I think the red badge wearers were all Apple employees. And what I think is funny about that is the classic book, The Red Badge of Courage. And of course, what is it, about a year ago now, maybe a little more, what is that famous quote? Was it from Phil Schiller, who was prominent in this event as well? He said, "Courage. It takes courage." So I think there might be a lot of irony. That sounds like a very Apple thing to do, to like reference a classic work like that. And so, so Red Badge of Courage for all the Apple employees. It was just kind of funny. I watched the whole thing, by the way, stem to stern, and it was about 2 hours. It was just maybe under 2 hours. It started at 1 and just about ended at 3. So after, they showed off everything, Tim Cook came out, or actually first they were playing an audio quote, or an audio like speech from Steve Jobs himself, which made a lot of sense. Then Tim Cook came out and he was pretty shaky. And I don't know if that was acting or if he was really nervous. I don't exactly know what was going on for him there, but he was literally, his hands were shaking. His voice was shaking. I mean, maybe he was really that emotional. Maybe he was really that broken up. I guess that's a possibility. But anyway, he started talking and they got to the point where they started talking some sales numbers and retail and all this. And then they brought out, and this was good to see at an Apple event because it had kind of been missing over the past few. They brought out one of their top ladies. Ladies are not commonplace to be speaking at Apple events. In this case, it was kind of not an acqui-hire, but someone that they poached effectively from Burberry, of course, the very famous retail store, and that is their CEO, Angela Ahrendts. And this is a very smart woman, and they paid, frankly, a lot of money to get her to go to Apple. I mean, this was a huge deal. But I have to admit that if Angela Ahrendts was behind what I saw as far as like what they were demoing out for their new stores, their new retail spaces and customer experience spaces, money fucking well spent, because I was seeing, for the second time in recent memory, I felt like I was seeing the future. So apparently they're going to rename their stores. They're going to start calling them town squares. And the idea is, and look, a lot of this is kind of marketing quiche, but I think they can actually deliver on it. Like, I think Apple can really like kind of make it happen. I mean, Apple probably has the most, I don't want to use the word retail, but I guess I'll say retail. They probably have the most retail cachet next to Starbucks. As to where Starbucks has a certain attitude that comes along with whenever you're in a Starbucks, if it's like, full-size Starbucks, of course. I think Apple can kind of deliver on that. So they're creating this space called, their stores are now going to be called town squares, and they're remodeling the stores. It's all from the same company. The same company's designing, the Spaceship Campus. They designed the Steve Jobs Theater and all this. In fact, actually, I have a friend who I used to work with at my last tech company that I worked at in New York, who he went on and he moved to Pennsylvania to actually work for the company that does a lot of the designing for Apple stores. And so I know personally they have very high quality people there, and they can make this kind of shit, work to the millimeter. And kudos to him. He knows who he is. So anyway, Yeah, these town squares. I think this is an impressive idea. Not so much new. I think this is something that really Apple was trying to do before originally with their stores. Okay, because one of the things that they're trying to shoot for is they have this idea called, and again, Angela Ahrendts is putting this all on, and I think she's doing a great job because apparently she hates being in front of people. Well, it didn't show. She did phenomenal. But they have this thing called Today at Apple, where what it is that every day at Apple, they're going to offer a different creative class, meaning or creative classes where they will teach you how to do, maybe something like video editing or how to do a podcast or how to make music, something like that, obviously with Apple hardware. Obviously, this is to sell Apple hardware. There's no question about that. Okay. But this is a really cool idea. Now, Apple stores had done this before. They used to have podcasters show up at some of their main stores and actually do shows from the Apple stores. I remember even Twit did episodes from Apple stores. Okay, so they're sort of revisiting an idea, but I think Angela Ahrendts kind of brought it in to where, it seems like it's more possible to do. Okay, this is something that could really be a reality, and she can set up the design that would be really attractive to people. I mean, and they're talking about there's whole patios. I mean, and they're working. One of the things they described is that they're working really, really. They're deeply integrated with what Chicago was trying to do, around one of the local rivers and set everything up, to kind of match everything that really an entire, strip of retail is trying to accomplish. I mean, so there's a lot of impressive stuff going on with that. And this is becoming a thing. It's not just an Apple thing where when you go to a brick and mortar store of some kind, you're going to an experience. There's perhaps not even going to be so much stuff to sell you. Or at least not like a crazy variety per se. Okay. But you're going there for an experience, and maybe you'll even order it online, whatever the fuck it happens to be. Who knows? But that's what you're shooting for. Certainly this is something else that Amazon is doing. Of course, Amazon would do so from perhaps the less aspirational crowd. They would try and do it, to reach, because like I've said, I've talked about this with my Amazon World Domination Tour theory. Okay, that I've had for long before any other journalists even paid attention, or any other tech journalists paid attention to Amazon as an actual tech company. Okay, I said that what Apple goes for the rich. Okay, they go for the affluent. Amazon does the exact opposite, the complete opposite sector. They are going for the dirt poor. That's why they sell 6-pack tablets for, $100 or however much they sell them for. Or the tablet's only $40-$50, or the Fire TV is only $35, whatever. They are going for the absolute low end, even though they have some aspirational products in certain categories. Okay, like some of the higher end Kindle e-readers, not the Fire tablets, but the e-readers. That's Amazon's, that's been their goal. So, and I think creating experiences, say in Whole Foods or some other areas, these are going to be experiences geared at, I think, a different clientele. And you could say, well, Whole Foods is, whole paycheck, and, this is where the affluent go. Yeah, but that's changing. Already you're getting the complaints from the Whole Foods, how to put this, the Whole Foods elite, the Whole Foods fans, that they're looking for somewhere else to shop now. So maybe they're going to hang out in these Apple town squares. When I say that it kind of reminded me of the future, I mean, these are just very clean spaces where people would seemingly not need to buy anything. We'll see how that works out. I mean, one of the potential dangers here is that, or not dangers, but problems perhaps for Apple, would be that parents are just going to drop their kids off at these fucking places, and let them go wild. And the kids love it because, here's a secret about Apple stores. The Wi-Fi there is great. It's really great. So it's a great place to hang out, right? Maybe even better than Starbucks. There was no sign of any kind of restaurant style stuff inside of these, but I think they'd be stupid if they didn't. That's going to happen somehow or other. Anyway, Apple and Starbucks have a great relationship already anyways. So yeah, seeing the future, I mean, places that are all about that creativity and then just having that super clean look and everything. Yeah, and that minimalist look. Yeah, I kind of felt like I was looking at the future. I mean, and I'm being sort of broad, and it's a feeling you get. Sometimes you can be very detailed in the feeling that you get. Other times it's just like a sense that you can't exactly explain. This is one of those senses that I can't exactly explain, but I'm sure it comes along with, seeing the Steve Jobs Theater, as well as, having an idea of what of what the spaceship campus is going to end up, looking like for Apple. So anyway, that was interesting, and I mean, that, like I said, that was one of the more exciting aspects of this whole deal was the town squares, because this is, well, I mean, I think Apple is very much trying to build a certain future, that revolves around them as a company. And of course that makes sense. I mean, if you can make an entire life, that's the dream of like every company, is to create a fucking lifestyle around your company. Right? I mean, like Nintendo, that's why hell, just even in the 90s, remember like with Sony, with the PlayStation, how they had PlayStation Underground? I mean, they wanted you to feel like a rebel, like you were in this lifestyle because you were a PlayStation gamer and all this shit. I mean, this is what you do. And Apple, obviously, with near endless money, could pull this off and could do it right. And obviously, and really credit to Angela Ahrendts. What an acquisition she was an acquisition, not Burberry, but what an acquisition on the part of Apple. Holy fuck. I mean, because I think she really delivered with this. Of course, you can't help but think of the William Gibson quote, where the future's already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. Obviously, these Apple stores are not going to be everywhere, and it's not so evenly distributed, I guess you could argue. And, depending upon how you feel about that, I could see both ways. But whatever. I mean, it was there. I was impressed. So, okay. Now, as far as in the crowd, Steve Wozniak was there. Good. It's an important one for him to be at. I mean, it is celebrating the 10th anniversary of the product that really saved the company. iPod definitely saved the company, but iPhone took it to, the $1 trillion or near $1 trillion heights, right? And obviously they don't give a shit about their laptops. That's just an afterthought for them. It's all about getting people into the ecosystem, and Mac OS I don't think is really a part of that. So so Woz was there, Steve Jobs' widow was there. All of that makes a lot of sense. So anyway, now starts the rotating of Tim Cook coming out, getting excited about the next product, and then bringing out other varying people to demo it. I'll tell you, I still really, really feel the loss of Scott Forstall with Apple. This was a guy that had genuine vision, and not the bullshit incremental vision that this event really proved Apple is working off of. Total incrementalism across the board, except for what they let Angela Ahrendts do, okay, with the town squares. It's really bad. And it's in fact, for a technologist or a futurist, it's fucking insulting just how incremental Apple is in everything that it does. Yep, it makes a lot of money, but it doesn't get us really anywhere, at least not yet. But it's very clear that they are trying to get, because look, a lot of times the affluent aren't the most technically minded, and they just want shit that works and that's secure, right? And I get that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but let's be clear that as Apple continually introduces new technologies or technologies that they just copycat from Android companies or something else, which is usually the case. They generally don't innovate. Apple hasn't innovated in years. So neither is Google. I'm not playing fanboy here. Okay. But let's be clear that they make it a very slow process to get people used to the next step that they want to go to. And I guess that's a process that you can do, but it's sort of fucking boring. It's really boring when, no, let's just skip to the fucking iPod already. You know what I mean? Let's skip to the revolutionary product already. Stop wasting our goddamn time. But that was clearly order of the day for this event, in my opinion anyway. So Tim Cook introduces Apple Watch, starts talking about Apple Watch, and it starts off talking about, some sales figures. Then it gets into Watch OS 4. Okay, but let's talk about the sales figures for a second. This is, Apple at the height of bullshit, because one of the first a lot of the figures that Tim Cook gives are meaningless. Like, they literally mean nothing, that you could pull them almost out of a hat. They have, I mean, they're so massageable and there's just so many problems with it. It doesn't mean anything. The customer satisfaction rating was the only number that kind of made some sense. And it was like around 90% or something. Great. I'm glad. But granted, it's kind of hard to feel bad, or it's kind of hard for the human mind, I think, to want to feel bad when you've laid down however many hundreds or thousands, perhaps, of dollars, for a watch. You're going to feel good about it. I mean, it's just like Rolex. Rolex watches keep shit time. You understand? I mean, like the $10 watch you can buy at Walmart will keep better time than a Rolex. Okay. But, when you hash out $10,000, or 20,000 or 30,000 with all the diamond studs on it, so you can't even read the watch face, which, hey, go for it. Okay. You're not really going to care much about how well it functions, right? But you're going to feel satisfied because you got a Rolex on your wrist and there's a lot of diamonds and it's shining. All right. So even the customer service number or the customer satisfaction number is sort of bullshit too, but it was the only one that really mattered. The worst, the most egregious number that they gave, though, the most egregious metric that Apple gave about Apple Watch is that they said it's now the number one selling watch in the world. And let me tell you why that's bullshit. First off, like I mentioned about Rolex, I mean, it's an aspirational product. It doesn't sell that much. You only need to sell 10 of them to make profit, right? In a year. You get what I'm saying? I mean, 10 that's a low ball, but you get my point. Okay. So if you beat Rolex at the amount of watches sold, not that impressive. Rolex was still number 2 on this list, but I'll explain why, because that leads to the real point here. To say that Apple Watch is the number 1 selling watch in the world is bullshit, because look, other than perhaps me and some other timekeeping aficionados or, timekeeping dilettantes, perhaps connoisseurs. I'm not a connoisseur. I'm certainly a dilettante. Okay. Other than some timekeeping dilettantes, nobody buys watches anymore. They just look at their fucking cell phone or maybe their Fitbit. And a Fitbit technically isn't a watch. If it was, that number wouldn't have fit. Like, there's no way Apple Watch is outselling Fitbit. That's horseshit. Okay. And I'm not complimenting Fitbit. I can't stand them. Right, but you get my point. So the thing is that since Timex isn't exactly, breaking down the doors anymore, okay, at stores, Rolex is the number 2 selling watch in the world, but that's because there's people who buy, when you buy a Rolex, you're buying something, that's going to last for hundreds of years. It's not like you buy a new Rolex every year. Usually you just buy you're one and done, or maybe 2 or 3 or something like that if you're lucky, but that's over a fucking lifetime, that you buy that many Rolexes or something. You don't sell a whole lot of Rolexes. So this idea that it's the number 1 watch in the world, look, the watch, for all intents and purposes, in the average consumer's mind, is meaningless. It's nothing. It doesn't exist anymore. It's a dead market category. It's not to me. I love watches. Okay. Like I said, I'm a timekeeping dilettante. I'm a huge fan of watches. I don't even want a smartwatch. Not the way that they're getting schlepped so far, really. Okay. But that was so, like, I was like, wow, Apple, you asshats. It was so dumb. Like that is, don't brag about being number 1 in a dead fucking category. Wow. That's how pathetic your Apple Watch is, you idiots. So anyway, after those bullshit metrics, we then get treated to some stuff about watchOS 4, which, enhancements, blah, blah, whatever. When you have a new operating system like every year, okay, it's going to get to the point where really, what can you do? Faster, better, stronger. Like that's, or, faster, leaner, meaner, maybe. That's about all you can really do every year. Now, if it's a new operating system, kind of like the old Windows days, where it's a new operating system every 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. Okay. Yeah. Then you've got a whole lot of announcements to make. Otherwise, talking about a new OS, fuck it, really. And we'll get into it more, even with iOS 11, bullshit. All right. Anyway, so I admittedly thought that once they were done talking about watchOS 4, that it was over. Okay, we're done talking about Apple Watch. And I would have applauded them for being done with Apple Watch at that point because, I said this when the first Apple Watch came out. I said, no. I was like, you can't. Watches by design, just like we were talking about with Rolex, you buy 2, 3 in a lifetime. If you're lucky, usually people just buy 1 in a lifetime if they can. Okay. A watch is something you're supposed to have for like a decade. 5, 10 years, something like that. It's not the 1-2 year life cycle Okay, like smartphones have, which I also think is bullshit, but whatever, there it is. Okay. And so I was like, oh, good. All right. No, they're letting their watches settle, because these are investments, even when it comes to watches when they start at $399. But no, they announced a new Apple Watch. So I other than one feature that this watch had, I call bullshit on the whole thing. Like I think it just proves the point that no, this is just never going to be a category. Nobody's going to buy this stuff that quickly. But they did what I've wanted smartwatches to do, and where I consider smartwatches viable, they got halfway there anyway, is that it now has, LTE built into it. It has cellular built in. Now, you can't put your own SIM card into it. In fact, it has this, it is really tiny, but it's more or less like a chip. Like they put in an electronic SIM card, and it's just a little chip. So that kind of sucks. Granted, they put in all the whatever new technologies they announced for it. It has built-in GPS, has the built-in LTE, okay, has a very unique, what they did is they actually took the screen of the watch is the actual antenna for the device. So because they were able to put in this new technology while keeping it the same size as the Series 2 Apple Watch. That's an impressive feat. I'm not going to take anything away from that. It has a dual core processor, all of that. And they talked about some of the, software kind of framework enhancements. Here's one thing they specifically said, and we have a specific API for skiers and snowboarders. Once again, just like Google Glass, a lot of this stuff, it all only makes sense if you're doing this really epic, cool shit in your life. Newsflash. Most people don't do epic, cool shit in their life. They just don't. That's why Google Glass doesn't work at a consumer level. And Apple Watch, I see plenty. Look, I pretty much see an Apple Watch just about anywhere I go now. So kudos, okay, that there's at least somebody wearing it there. But often enough, a lot of the Apple Watches I've seen haven't been on young people. It's been on people older than me, sometimes significantly older than me. And it's probably them trying to think that they're being hip. Okay. No offense if you're a Sovereign Tech listener, especially a patron, and you're wearing an Apple Watch, obviously, but you get my point. You get my drift. Okay. Clearly you a Sovereign Tech listener are far more, tech savvy than the average person. So I understand why you'd want to experiment with smartwatches. Okay. I understand. I don't know that I agree, but I understand. So anyway, and they made a big deal about the fact that, because of cellular connectivity, it'll all be one phone number. Okay. The thing is that they didn't talk at all about what is it going to cost to add an Apple Watch to an account, to whatever account, mobile, telco account that you happen to have with Sprint or Verizon or AT&T or whoever. They didn't describe that at all. And that's probably going to cost a pretty penny to do. I can't imagine they're going to allow it for free. But the other thing is that, again, they're not, it still has to, even though it has its own, SIM card, it still has to tether to the phone. It still connects to the phone and uses the phone's phone number and all that. And for me, that's just not exciting. I want the smartwatch that can work completely independently. Okay. Now there's some Android Wear watches that can do that. Okay. But Apple Watch is not there yet. Maybe they're looking to get it there. In fact, it kind of hinted really maybe that they were. But anyway, so it has its own SIM card. Okay, great. Finally, it has a little more viability for what it does. They did do, admittedly, a really cool demo where they had a gal, and this wasn't pre-taped, they had a gal out on a paddleboard, okay, and while she was paddleboarding, she was talking into the Apple Watch using it as her phone, effectively, right? She wasn't carrying her phone out with her on her paddleboard because, where would you put it in the wetsuit? And the call quality, gotta say, was incredible. That was a really, really cool, impressive demo on their part. Reaching out to that gal on the paddleboard. It was funny. It worked. It was really impressive. That delivered. Okay, nice job on that, Apple, and I mean that dead serious. That was actually really, really clever, and it showed off what the technology was really capable of. But otherwise, nothing exciting about Apple Watch, and all the previous problems apply. And it's crazy that there's already a Series 3 when it has, I don't even think it's been 4 years since the first Apple Watch. It hasn't been long. So anyway, so they're still selling. This is kind of weird. and we'll talk more about this when we get to the iPhones specifically. But with Apple Watch, so what you can buy if you go to store.apple.com now, if you go to an Apple store or whatever, you can buy a Series 1 Apple Watch, not a Series 2. A Series 1, you can buy that for $250. Okay? And that's obviously meant to be an entry-level watch. Series 2 will no longer be available, which is kind of weird, but okay. But then you can buy the Series 3 is available for $329 if you don't get cellular connectivity. If you get cellular connectivity, it's $399. Okay, fine. And the bulk of everything that they talked about, other than the iPhone 10, will be out September 22nd. And I think pre-orders are like September 15th, just a few days from now. So anyway, after the Apple Watch, which again, nothing, I mean, yeah, it's cool that it has cellular, but look, if I can't just use it and not have to worry about my smartphone, I don't have to have a smartphone, it just doesn't excite me. I mean, a couple little features they talked about how, you can listen to music wherever you are. And obviously the AirPods becomes like a brilliant thing, right? Because the AirPods are Bluetooth and you can instantly connect, to the watch, and okay, great. But the other thing is that like Siri can now talk to you through the watch, which previously wasn't possible in Apple Watch. That's not an exciting feature. Who the fuck gets excited about Siri? I don't think anybody does. So whatever. After that was the Apple TV 4K. Also not an exciting offering whatsoever. I mean, if you're into 4K, I guess maybe this is somewhat exciting. I didn't see a whole lot going on. I mean, it can do HDR, so it's not just 4K, but it can also do HDR, which is high dynamic range. Which the concept is that 4K is more pixels, HDR is sort of refining. Okay, the pixels to a degree. And there's different types of HDR. This specifically can handle HDR10, which is the most common standard, as well as Dolby Vision, which is, a huge one, especially for theaters. Okay, so nice, that it can do 4K. Doesn't really excite me much, but all right, I get where people could be excited. Nice move on their part. They said that any movies you bought through iTunes that have 4K versions available, they said you get a free upgrade to the 4K version of it. That was a good touch, because you wouldn't want to seem to be even more money grubbing if you fucking made everybody buy their movies again in 4K. That would have been a marketing blunder, in my opinion. So they really won, I think, people over, with that move, and I think that was a good move. Also, they were talking about live sports coming to Apple TV. It looked like just basketball. I wasn't seeing like anything like NFL Sunday Ticket, which is a very exclusive deal through other other services, not through Apple. So whatever, that's how it is. As far as what models they have a 32 gig model for $179, had a 64 gig model for $199. Okay, I don't think anybody's really going to buy more than the 32 gig model, especially since the bulk of the content you consume on an Apple TV, you either stream or it's something that exists within your Apple account anyway, and you can download it at any time, so you don't need to store it onto the device. Now, one interesting thing, this is just a total side note, doesn't really have a whole lot to do with Apple. I was kind of surprised. One of the movies that they showed off, like, I mean, it was more of a still, but, that they showed off while they're going through the UI of Apple TV, and that they're very particular of what movies they're showing. They're not just showing anything. One of the big blow-ups on the UI was Jayla from Star Trek Beyond. I don't get it. I see in so many commercials, when I actually ever see commercials on TV and there's some kind of entertainment service being showed off, I'm in awe about how almost all of them are showing off Star Trek Beyond. But that was considered, not critically so much, but financially a flop. It's kind of weird. Like, I wonder who's paying for that to be shown on screen in so many different venues. I mean, I'm glad, because I thought it was the best movie of 2016. I mean, I think it's one of the best Star Trek movies made. It's fantastic. But it's just kind of odd that I keep seeing that pop up. I mean, especially since it's an older movie. I mean, 2016. We're almost done with 2017. You should be showing the modern flicks. So to show that off was kind of strange, but whatever. It was there, and it's just kind of a side note for that. Same deal. Comes out September 22nd. What the fuck ever. Okay, so after that, we end up with the iPhone 8. So they didn't do the iPhone 7S, or the iPhone 7S Plus. They jumped right to 8. As far as the iPhones go, and really a lot what was talked about in this event, including the Apple TV 4K and etc., all of this was leaked. It was all leaked like weeks ahead of time. And they were right pretty much all the way down the line. There were no surprises with this. But here's the thing. I didn't really look at the leaks. I knew the leaks happened, but I'm not an Apple fanboy, so I didn't really care. So it's not like I was watching it and, my sense of awe and ooh was somehow ruined because I had seen the leaks. No, I knew it was leaked, but I never checked it out. I didn't give a shit. So whatever. I mean, that didn't affect me. This was boring for boring's sake. It was not because I knew ahead of time everything that was going to be announced. Like I said, I didn't know that there was going to be the Series 3 watch. There was, a whole bunch of things I had no clue about. So anyway, the iPhone 8, iPhone 8 Plus, those were the two announced, and they are upgrading to there's a 64 gig model, as well as there's only two now, a 64 gig model and a 256 gigabyte model. That's pretty high end to be doing 256. I think there's a reason for that. But anyway, pricing starts, for just the iPhone 8, it starts at $700. For the 8 Plus, starts at $800. Okay, woohoo. Same deal. Coming out end of September. Okay. Water and dust proof. I mean, these were, again, obviously very incremental steps, as far as iPhones go. No surprise, I think, from anybody there. They talked about, there's a new Retina display. There's new stereo speakers, top and bottom. There was, now, all right, here's something that was kind of interesting was the A11 Bionic processor that's in it. I mean, it's pretty impressive what the fuck they're doing with that processor. Like, this is a 6-core processor, 64-bit, and like they have, two of them are like high efficiency processors, and I mean, like it's in a very real sense. If you had access to like the proper scripting language and software to put on there, like you're dealing in many ways with for the first time, I think, in a smartphone's history, you're very much dealing with a supercomputer that finally, I mean, I've been annoyed whenever people would say, oh, you have a supercomputer in your pocket. Well, with the iPhone 8, it's finally kind of true, in my opinion. And the GPU, very impressive. I mean, all of that, those specs are really nice. The only thing is that largely, iOS itself doesn't really take much advantage of a lot of that. And also, the RAM is incredibly low. That doesn't mean you can't do impressive things with that. I mean, the PlayStation 3 was a genuine supercomputer and has actually been used as a supercomputer. The thing is that you're very limited in function because you don't have a shit ton of RAM. Same problem is still true with iPhones. In fact, that's why I don't think they ever really talk about RAM that much because, they know that they put in very little. I mean, it works and it doesn't necessarily need it, and they do obviously very impressive things with it. But, even if you could turn it into custom shit, it's just, it's not going anywhere. So, anyway, perhaps the more interesting, I mean, the camera's better, there's optical image stabilization, blah, blah, blah. But maybe the most interesting thing was that they finally, and, it's waterproof. I think I already said that. But it has a glass backing. They've gotten away from the aluminum body, finally. And this is another case where Apple was just being fucking stubborn. Apple were being asses. And they were the ones, and I've said this before, I said this a long time ago on Sovereign Tech, they were keeping phones from being able to do wireless charging. Now, not that wireless charging is that groundbreaking of a technology or anything, or that huge of a deal. I mean, oh shit, you have to, you've got to lift up your phone and plug something into it. I mean, come on, it's not that big a deal. Okay, but really, Apple was the ones keeping everybody from getting into this notion of wireless charging. Now they finally, I guess maybe they just needed one other feature to make the iPhone 8 somehow a little more interesting, because really it doesn't seem like that big of a leap, from the iPhone 7 other than the A11 processor. Yeah, they did it. And kudos to them for finally sticking with an open standard with Qi charging, right? QI Qi. That means you could just use pretty much any wireless charger that you've had forever, because Android phones have been doing this for a very, very long time. So I don't care for glass phones. I think it's kind of a bad idea. Obviously, Apple's not going to do plastic, but whatever. They felt the need to go this route with it, and so now iPhones are going to be glass because they're going to rock with this wireless charging. And wireless charging really only gets interesting, I think, inside of like cars. That's where that needs to be like kind of a breakthrough, is for cars to be able to wireless charge, and you don't have wires sticking out of your dash and everything. So anyway, that's there. Really nothing exciting about the iPhone 8. They did get into augmented reality, and the 6 Plus or the 8 Plus has a couple more image features than what the standard iPhone 8 has. Again, the sizes didn't change. It's what is it, the 5.2 and the 5.5 or whatever that they come in. But they did talk about how the cameras on the iPhone 8 are specifically designed to handle augmented reality. The thing is, they showed a couple games and they showed some other stuff. I thought the augmented reality demo, and look, a lot of tech journalists were making a huge fucking deal about, oh, now Apple's into augmented reality. This is going to fucking change everything, blah, 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 blah. I thought the demos were weak, poor, and have little real world value. The only thing that I thought was, it was interesting when they did where if you were at a baseball game, you could hold up your phone and then you could get a bunch of stats and everything, and you could know all the players that you're seeing, whatever. Okay, that was kind of interesting. They had what is kind of like Google's, or what used to be Google's Sky Map, where you could, look up at the stars and it would tell you the constellations and everything. With augmented reality, it just overlaid it on the actual sky that you were seeing. That was kind of cool, but by and large, there wasn't any. They didn't really show anything interesting. The games they showed, I thought, were very boring, incredibly unimpressive, and impractical for what they were doing. Like, they were showing this MOBA, okay, and just kind of like a real time strategy game, like Warcraft or something like that. They were showing this MOBA, and you're like, you have to walk around it, and it all projected onto a table. It all seemed like very perfect world, but then who the fuck's going to play a game forever, like holding up the smartphone in front of their face? You just look like a goof playing that thing. Not like a goof like virtual reality, where who the fuck cares? You're in another reality. No, this is on top of reality, and you just look ridiculous. And that's something to really consider is cool factor. That's part of the reason that Google Glass eventually failed. So yeah, I was very unimpressed with what they had to do with augmented reality, and I think everybody's excitement around iOS 11 and the new iPhone being a major play in augmented reality was completely unjustified, did not pay off whatsoever, and there were a lot of wild claims made about these iPhones that none of them delivered, including our next one, which was the iPhone 10, it's spelled iPhone X, but it's iPhone 10, kind of like, what used to be OS 10, how it looked like OS X and whatever. Anyway. So Tim Cook, when he announced this, he did pull the whole, but one more thing, which they hadn't said in years, which was a famous, Steve Jobs line. And same deal as the iPhone 8, where it's, yes. Okay. So here's the thing. So this was going to be the 10th, they skipped to 10, they skipped 9, just like Microsoft did, but probably nobody's going to make fun of Apple, which is stupid. Like everybody cracked a joke about how Windows skipped from 8 to 10. Oh, but the iPhone skips to 10. No jokes? What the fuck? As usual, Apple fans are complete hypocrites. But anyway, so yeah, so this is supposed to be, the big deal. This is the new iPhone. This is going to change everything because, we're celebrating 10 years since 2007 when the first iPhone, was unleashed upon the world and everything. And I thought it was very lackluster for a 10th anniversary phone. I was expecting a whole hell of a lot more, to go along with it. Same deal. It's glass, just like the iPhone 8, so it can do the wireless charging. Okay, fine. There's some minor differences on the outside. It has a vertical like camera and phone sensor setup on the back as compared to the horizontal that most iPhones have had. It only comes in 2 colors, space gray and silver, is where the iPhone 8 came in a more traditional color line. It is a 5.8 inch phone, so it's larger than the 7 Plus, the 8 Plus, whatever. And so this is the biggest phone that Apple's ever made. Yep. It has a super retina display, not just a new retina display like the iPhone 8. No, this is a super retina display, whatever the hell that means. It's all marketing crap. It can do 4K, just like the 4K TV, where it does HDR10 or, Dolby Vision. Now, the interesting thing was, and this, again, I know parts of this were leaked, but they got rid of the fingerprint sensor. There's no more home button. It's gone. What you have is what's supposed to be a very impressive thing called Face ID. So there's facial recognition technology that allows you to, that is what unlocks your phone. Now you can set up pins and all this different stuff still, Okay, but it's all going to be, you look at it, you hold it up to your face, you look at it, and then you just swipe up and away you go. Or you look at it and it unlocks it, and to get access to all of your apps, you just swipe up. So no button, like almost no buttons on this thing, and everything's going to be done through gestures. I think that's a failure. Okay, I mean, it really is, because, you're just, I think people are very used to, gestures are not new. Like, Android phones have been trying gestures forever. There have been a ton of different skins on top of Android that have tried gestures to be like the main, UI, and they don't take off. Now, I mean, in this case, you don't have a fucking choice, but I think it's always going to feel a little bit wonky. So, they talked about how they have a true depth camera system. So Face ID is using like this 3D mapping and everything. And there was a lot of this interesting stuff that they were able to do because of this really impressive camera built in, which is really a miniaturized version of Windows Hello. So once again, because Windows Hello does like a 3D mapping. So once again, Apple didn't innovate at all, and they're years behind as usual. But anyway, so you have Face ID. In fact, it was funny because when they were first testing Face ID, it failed the first shot. And that's the thing. Biometrics suck. If there has been one message that has been positively consistent from the very beginning, almost 6 years ago on Sovereign, it is biometrics suck fucking ass. They are terrible. They are not secure. This is the same, this kind of facial recognition unlocking thing was going to be a major selling point for the Galaxy S8, right? From Samsung. What happened? On the showroom floor, it was hacked. They cracked right into it just by like bending the picture of paper, the paper with the picture of somebody's face on it. Now, maybe it won't be as easy to do with, with Face ID, but I am completely unimpressed. I think that this is always going to be a cumbersome and slow unlocking process. And I think what really happened here, the reason that Face ID is a thing to unlock the phone is because Apple couldn't develop the technology quick enough that allowed for the entire screen to be the fingerprint reader, to be Touch ID, because that's the plan. That's really what happened here. And I think that's bullshit to sell people like an intentionally inferior product that is going to have, is going to next year or whenever is going to have the, Touch ID built right into it. The 10S, which is going to be weird because it's going to say XS. And I really think that's going to end up odd. But anyway, when they do that, it's going to have Touch ID built into the screen, and then they'll get back to Touch ID. Face ID is one of the worst ideas I've ever seen. I was just as harsh with Windows Hello. It's bad news. Touch ID is no prize either, okay? But this is worse. This is really worse than Touch ID. Shit, like now, how about that argument of unlocking your phone, right? At the Border Patrol. Well, because there was the big argument. Well, wait a minute. Can I actually give my fingerprint, at the border? Now it's like, the Border Patrol agent or the cop or whatever is going to say, okay, please hand me your phone. Look at your phone. They'll just hold it up to your face. Oh, your phone's unlocked. Here, let me use this. Oh, this is so stupid. And if anybody's ooh and awing about this, the fun things you can do with it are interesting, right? And especially maybe their applications with augmented reality. I could see a future where a lot of that could get really interesting. Like they did the funny faces with Johnny Ives' face, which whatever. Okay, like that kind of technology, fine. But to use it as your security and as your unlock? Fuck no. No way. Good thing they still allow for the pin unlock, because shit. This is bad news. Don't do it. If you're going to buy one of these, do the pin unlock right away. Fuck Face ID. Fuck it. That's the same recommendation I gave with Touch ID, but whatever. Fucking A. So anyway, as far as the faces go, they say they are not keeping a database of your, of a 3D representation of your face. All of that will be stored and hashed, encrypted in their secure enclave, much like they claim about the fingerprints. I don't necessarily believe that, and we can't really prove or disprove because it's not open source. So, and really, recently people have been getting into the nitty gritty of the secure enclave. This has been talked about in recent episodes of Security Now. In fact, just a couple episodes ago where they did a deep dive on it, and you found out, oh shit, Apple did some not so great moves as far as security goes with the Secure Enclave. So there's problems here. Okay. Anyway, face tracking, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just none of this really excited me. It only terrified me, and it only made me, it just screamed not secure. And it's just hilarious that it didn't even work right away, right on stage. So other things about the iPhone 10, it has 2 hours of the battery lasts 2 hours longer than the iPhone 7. That's totally believable because it's a 5.8 inch screen, so there's a little extra real estate on that body, and they pour in the batteries like liquid anyway. So I'm sure you could pour in 2 extra hours of battery into a body that size. The price starts at $1,000 to go full bore to the 256 gig model. I think it's like $1,149, so you're paying over $1,000 for a smartphone. I think that's positively ridiculous. I think that's stupid, but that's all up to taste. I think, again, I have a Moto E4. This thing costs $100, and I am never I'm never feeling like, oh shit, I can't do that. Like, that never crosses my mind. Like, yeah, every once in a while, because it only has 16 gig of memory, onboard storage, I have to, clear stuff. But I mean, there's solutions around that, especially with the new versions of Android, where you can make your SD card and your onboard memory, working in conjunction to be one hard drive. Okay. So all of this just seems, again, so unimpressive, so wrong. I'm not impressed, and it's not going to come out till November. So this is the one that'll be coming out a little bit later. They did show like a wide charger that I think they're making available, and they showed how now you could wirelessly charge all from one charger your iPhone, iPhone 10 or iPhone 8. You could charge your new, or you could charge your Apple Watch, and you could charge your AirPods all from the same wireless charger. So yeah, they got an ecosystem and a family going here. Makes sense. I get that. Nothing crazy about that. I mean, in fact, it's a good idea on their part. So, but nothing. I mean, all the extra bells and whistles that they added to the A11 and everything with the iPhone 10, just nothing really that impressive. But then the iPhone 8 isn't really impressive either. Now, let's get into kind of the overall here, so I can wrap this up. You're ending up with, at the end of all of that, they talked about, so this is the iPhone family that you can purchase. What was really weird about this at the end of it, because they covered, the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10, is that they are offering, kind of like I said with the Apple Watch, where you can buy the Series 1 and the Series 3. Here's kind of the interesting thing. So you can buy from the Apple Store, brand new still. Okay, so this is their present product lineup for iPhone. You can get the 6S, you can get the SE, their little one. You can get the 7, you can get the 8, and I don't even think it was the 7S. Maybe it's the 7S. But anyway, you can get the 7, you can get the 8, and you can get the 10. And they're making those like, this is the line that you can buy. And obviously, like, on, older models, the price went down significantly. I think the iPhone SE is at $350. What you have here, this is very reminiscent to me of what was going towards like the end of life with the iPod, where you had all of these different iPods that you could purchase and everything. And what I really think that this is a move towards, what this is an attempt at, is to create what appears to be a diverse ecosystem in an ecosystem that has no diversity. And what I mean by that is that one of the selling points for Android for a lot of people, I think, is the wild options that you get. You get to choose from different phones, and different types, different styles and all this. And different feature sets. And you could, like, if you want something, maybe you're like me, where I want a Moto E4 that has a limited feature set. You're a person that wants a limited feature set. You can get that with, say the iPhone 6S or something. So I find it fascinating that they're making all of these, and they're still kind of producing and going through the stock of all. I mean, understand, it's not like they have a problem selling these phones. So, I mean, they're still producing new ones. But I think that's really what the deal at the end here was that they're trying to create an entire ecosystem in a product line, that they can fill up their new town squares with, right? Because, how many tables can you fill if you only have the iPad Pro, maybe the iPad Mini Pro, the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10. In fact, that's why I think the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 10 coexist at the same time instead of just skipping right to 10. Is so that, again, you have more in your product category. Okay. And then you have the Series 1 watch and you have the Series 3 watch. And so you have a lot more to show off. inside of your store. And I really think that's what it's all about. Now, at the end of all of this, if you are wanting to buy an iPhone, I'll tell you, I think the iPhone SE is still the best iPhone. I think it's the best iPhone ever, and I still think it's the best iPhone for a few reasons. One is it's the most powerful, not the most powerful iPhone, but it's one of the most powerful phones on the market, across the board, Android, whatever. Okay, it's one of the most powerful phones out there, but it's also small. It's your little 4 or 5 inch whatever job that I think is great. I love small phones. I think small phones are kind of the future. I've been calling that for a while, okay? Even though there was a time where I enjoyed large phones. It's small, and here's a big winner. It has a headphone jack. But it's still got the 64-bit processor and all that latest shit. I think, and it's the cheapest one. It's only $350. I think that's a fucking steal. And like I said, whether I wish it were the other way around or whatever, iPhones are the most secure systems out of the box, straight up. Like if you are wanting a really secure device, there's a reason governments buy them, militaries use them now and all that stuff because they're very, very secure. So the iPhone SE, very attractive product, especially at that price, $350. Now, next year or maybe even, come springtime, there might be an iPhone SE 2. But the concern there is that they're going to get rid of the headphone jack. Not good, in my opinion. So the iPhone SE, very attractive. I wouldn't mind one myself, being completely honest here. So this was, once again, just a very unimpressive presentation, very boring presentation, I think. Other than, the Steve Jobs Theater was very impressive. I thought everything that was being shown off as far as the town squares go was a very interesting direction for the company to go because obviously they can't really innovate in hardware. They better innovate somewhere. And those town squares are a step in, in that direction. That's it. We're over an hour now. Nothing else really to say about the Apple event. I think that runs the gamut. They have dropped the ball. I will say this. They have, in my opinion, as far as demo wise and everything, they have completely dropped the ball on augmented reality. And so I think obviously with AR Core, Google at their October event is going to take a shot at them. They may have something more impressive to show off then. But this just bolsters what I said was that episode 243, last week's episode of Sovereign Tech, the most recent one, where I said that Microsoft's HoloLens is going to wipe the floor with all this stuff. This event proved that fact, that HoloLens can just take the cake as far as AR because Apple put it in, but no one's really taking advantage of it. And, what they're showing off, they're supposed to show off the best that it can do. And you could say, well, they're still figuring it out. No, they're not still figuring it out. In fact, it was also kind of weird that Pokemon Go wasn't a part of this whole event. That you imagine that would have been an interesting thing, but maybe it wasn't because if you talk to Pokemon Go players now, they don't use the AR aspects of it. They turn it off to save battery and do whatever else. Now they just, run it through the standard UI on the phone. So maybe there's a reason Nintendo wasn't a part of the program this time around when that was a huge deal last time. And it was a good move on their part, I thought originally. Anyway, totally unimpressed with their AR play. iOS 11, there's not much else to talk about. The big thing people were talking about would be AR, but they're not. I don't think they're doing it right. And I think HoloLens is just going to wipe the floor with all of them. And again, if, like I predicted in episode 243 of Sovereign Tech, that they actually announce it and, they really go balls to the wall with it. And VR and mixed reality and AR in general at their event coming at the end of October. So Microsoft's going to get the last word because it'll be the last scheduled one, for the year out of the tech giants. So anyway, that's it. There's your Apple event 2017. It was terrible. That's the review. More content coming out this week for patrons. And of course, there'll be a new Sex and Science Hour and a new Sovereign Tech. I will see you on the other side.